Remember those cold winter mornings when the frost painted patterns on the windows? Our grandparents faced those same mornings with far fewer resources than we have today. Today we're exploring 25 hearty breakfast foods that kept families warm and fed through the harsh winters of the past, when every penny counted and nothing went to waste. Let's start with oatmeal porridge. This wasn't the instant stuff we know today. Back in the 1930s through the 1950s, a big pot of oatmeal could feed an entire family for just pennies. Steel-cut oats cost about 10 cents a pound, which would be roughly $1.50 in today's money. Families would cook it slow on the wood stove, often starting it the night before. The porridge would bubble away, filling the kitchen with warmth. Some families added a pinch of salt, others a drizzle of molasses if they had it. During the Depression, mothers would stretch it even further by adding extra water, making it thinner, but ensuring everyone got a bowl. The leftovers would be poured into a loaf pan, chilled overnight, then sliced and fried in a bit of lard the next morning. That's right, fried oatmeal was a breakfast staple. It created a crispy outside with a creamy center, turning yesterday's porridge into something that felt almost special. Cornmeal mush. Before boxed cereals dominated breakfast tables, cornmeal mush fed millions of American families. A pound of cornmeal cost about 5 cents in 1940, enough to make breakfast for a family of 6 for several days. The preparation was simple. Boil water, slowly whisk in cornmeal, add salt, and stir until thick. But here's what made it versatile. Like oatmeal, leftover mush was poured into pans and cooled. The next morning it was sliced and fried until golden brown, served with whatever was available. In the South, it might be drizzled with sorghum syrup. In the North, maybe a bit of maple syrup if the family was lucky. Some families would fry it in bacon grease saved from Sunday's breakfast, giving it a smoky flavor that made you forget you were eating the same thing for the third day straight. During the coldest months, when chickens weren't laying and milk was scarce, fried cornmeal mush with a bit of saved fat was often the only hot meal until supper. Toast and drippings. Every bit of fat was precious in our grandparents' kitchens. Bacon drippings, beef tallow, even chicken fat was carefully saved in coffee cans or crocks. A slice of day-old bread, toasted over the stove and spread with these drippings, provided essential calories on frigid mornings. The fat would melt into the warm bread, creating what some called poor man's butter. In farming families, this might be enhanced with a sprinkle of salt or, during hog-killing time, crispy bits of rendered cracklins mixed into the fat. City families during the Depression would sometimes stand in bread lines for day-old loaves, then make this simple breakfast. Stretch for days. The drippings jar sat on every stove, a testament to the waste not, want not mentality that saw families through hard times. Biscuits and gravy, flour, lard, buttermilk, and a bit of baking soda, that's all it took to make biscuits. Add some breakfast sausage or just flour and milk for gravy, and you had a meal that stuck to your ribs all morning. In the 1940s, a 25-pound sack of flour cost about 50 cents. That same sack could make biscuits for weeks. The gravy was often just flour browned in whatever fat was available, mixed with water or milk if they had it. Sawmill gravy, they called it, because it was common in logging camps where supplies were limited. Sometimes there was no meat at all in the gravy, just flour, fat, salt, and pepper, what they called pour du. But hot biscuits with any kind of gravy felt like a feast on a cold morning when the wind whistled through the cracks in the walls. Bread and milk. This simple dish has almost vanished from American tables, but it fed countless children through winter mornings. Stale bread torn into chunks, placed in a bowl, and covered with warm milk, sometimes sweetened with a bit of sugar or molasses. During the Depression, when fresh bread was a luxury, week-old loaves sold for 3 cents. Families would soften this hard bread with hot milk, creating a porridge-like consistency. Some added a pinch of cinnamon or nutmeg if they had it. In German-American families, they called it milk toast, and sometimes added a beaten egg for extra nutrition. It was especially popular for feeding young children and elderly family members who had trouble with harder foods. Think about that. An entire breakfast for a family of 4 could cost less than a dime. Fried potatoes. Potatoes were the backbone of winter survival. A 100-pound sack cost about $1 in 1935 and could last a family for months if stored properly in the root cellar. For breakfast, leftover boiled potatoes from supper were sliced and fried in whatever fat was available. Some families had them every single morning from October through March. The trick was getting them crispy on the outside while keeping them fluffy inside. Farm families might fry them with onions from the garden. If there were eggs, they'd crack them right on top of the potatoes in the skillet. In mining towns, mothers would wake at 4 a.m. to fry potatoes for their husbands' lunch pails, then fry another batch for the children's breakfast. During the worst of times, fried potatoes might be the only hot food of the day. Pancakes without eggs. When chickens stopped laying in winter or when eggs were too expensive to buy, families still made pancakes. Flour, water, or milk, a bit of baking soda, and salt. That was the basic recipe. Some called them water pancakes or depression cakes. They weren't as fluffy as regular pancakes, but they filled empty bellies. Creative mothers would add mashed potatoes to the batter for substance or grated apples from the root cellar for sweetness. Instead of syrup, which was expensive, families might use homemade apple butter, corn syrup, or just a sprinkle of sugar. Some would save bacon grease specifically for pancake mornings, giving the cakes a crispy edge and smoky flavor. A batch could feed 6 children for less than 15 cents worth of ingredients. Rice pudding for breakfast. Leftover rice never went to waste. Mixed with milk, a bit of sugar, and maybe some cinnamon or raisins, yesterday's supper rice became this morning's hot breakfast. Rice was cheap, about 5 cents a pound in the 1930s. Families would purposely make extra rice at dinner, knowing it would become tomorrow's breakfast pudding. Some added an egg if they had one, making it more custard-like. Others just warmed the rice with milk and a precious bit of vanilla extract, saved for special occasions. In households with many children, a big pot of rice pudding could feed everyone for pennies per serving. During the coldest months, it was served hot, but in early spring it might be served cold with a bit of cream on top if the cow was producing. Hasty pudding. This colonial-era breakfast made a comeback during the Depression. Cornmeal cooked with milk or water until thick, then sweetened with molasses or maple syrup. It cooked quickly, hence hasty, and cost almost nothing to make. In New England, families had been making this for 200 years. The cornmeal would be added slowly to boiling liquid, stirring constantly to prevent lumps. Some families added a handful of dried berries or chopped apples. Others stirred in a spoonful of butter if they could afford it. The pudding could be eaten hot immediately or cooled and sliced like polenta. Native American families had their own version called samp, made from hominy corn. During the 1940s, when sugar was rationed, hasty pudding sweetened with molasses became even more common. Crackers and milk. Store-bought crackers or homemade hardtack soaked in warm milk was a common winter breakfast. Saltines cost about 10 cents a box and could make several breakfast servings. Families would break crackers into a bowl, pour hot milk over them, and sometimes add a bit of butter or sugar. Some called it cracker pudding. In rural areas, families made their own hardtack, a simple flour and water cracker that kept for months. Railroad workers and their families often relied on this breakfast because crackers traveled well and didn't spoil. During the influenza pandemic of 1918, when many mothers were too sick to cook, children learned to make this simple breakfast for themselves and younger siblings. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm and filling. Johnny cakes. These cornmeal pancakes date back to the 1700s, but remained popular through the Depression. Unlike wheat pancakes, Johnny cakes used just cornmeal, salt, and boiling water. Some regions added a bit of milk or an egg if available. They were denser than regular pancakes but could be made even when wheat flour was scarce or expensive. In Rhode Island, they made them thin and lacy. In the South, thick and substantial. The batter would sizzle when it hit the hot griddle greased with bacon fat or lard. Families would make extra to eat cold later, sometimes packed in lunch pails with a bit of molasses for dipping. During the 1930s, when drought destroyed wheat crops, Johnny cakes became the daily breakfast for many Dust Bowl families. Milk toast. Not to be confused with bread and milk, milk toast involved actual toasted bread in a cream sauce. The sauce was just milk thickened with flour and butter if available, poured over toasted bread. It was considered suitable for invalids and children, easy to digest and warming. During the Spanish flu pandemic and through the Depression, this became the standard breakfast for anyone feeling poorly. The milk sauce could be seasoned with salt and pepper or sweetened with sugar for children. Some families added a poached egg on top when possible. At 5 cents for a loaf of bread and 10 cents for a quart of milk, a family could eat milk toast all week for less than a quarter. Scrapple. In Pennsylvania, Dutch country, and throughout the Mid-Atlantic, scrapple was the ultimate waste-not breakfast. Made from pork scraps, cornmeal, and spices, it was formed into a loaf, chilled, then sliced and fried. During hog butchering season, families would make pounds of it, using every bit of the pig that couldn't be used elsewhere. The head, heart, liver, and other organs were boiled until tender, the meat picked off, then mixed with the cooking broth and cornmeal. Seasoned with sage, thyme, and black pepper, it would set up firm when cooled. A few slices fried crispy in a hot skillet made a protein-rich breakfast that cost virtually nothing if you raised your own hogs. City dwellers could buy it from German butchers for about 10 cents a pound. 2 slices with a piece of bread kept a working man going until lunch. Hominy grits. In the South, grits were as essential as coffee. Made from corn treated with lye to remove the hull, hominy grits cooked up creamy and filling. A pound of grits cost about 5 cents and could make breakfast for a family for several days. They'd cook slowly on the back of the stove, stirred occasionally to prevent sticking. Some families ate them plain with just salt and butter. Others added cheese if they had it, or red-eye gravy made from ham drippings and coffee. During the Depression, when many Southern families were sharecropping and cash was scarce, grits might be the only breakfast, lunch, and sometimes supper too. But cooked right, with enough butter or fatback mixed in, they were satisfying enough to fuel a morning of hard labor. Beans on toast. Before it became a British stereotype, beans on toast was a common American breakfast. Navy beans, cooked overnight and seasoned with molasses and salt pork, spooned over toasted bread. A pound of dried beans cost about 8 cents in 1940 and could feed a family twice, dinner and then breakfast. Some families made depression beans, just beans, water, and whatever seasoning they had. No meat, no molasses, just salt and maybe an onion. But served hot over toast, with the bean liquid soaking in, it was filling and nutritious. In lumber camps and mining towns, this was standard fare. The protein from the beans combined with the carbohydrates from the bread provided energy for hard physical labor. Fried bread. Different from toast, fried bread was fresh, or day-old bread fried in fat until golden and crispy. Sometimes dipped in beaten egg first if eggs were available, making a simple version of French toast without the milk or fancy seasonings. Native American families made their own version with simpler dough fried in lard. During the Depression, bakeries sold day-old bread for 2 cents a loaf. Mothers would slice it thick and fry it in bacon grease or lard, saved from other cooking. The outside would get crunchy while the inside stayed soft. Some families sprinkled it with sugar, Others ate it plain or with a bit of jam made from summer fruit. In coal mining regions, miners' wives would fry bread at 4 a.m., wrap it in cloth, and it would still be warm when their husbands ate it deep in the mines hours later. Boiled wheat cereal. Before processed cereals, families bought whole wheat berries in bulk and cooked them like rice. Soaked overnight and boiled until soft, wheat berries made a chewy, nutty breakfast. A 50-pound sack of wheat cost about 75 cents and could last months. Farm families often grew their own wheat and kept some whole for breakfast cereal, rather than having it all ground into flour. The cooked wheat would be served with milk and honey or molasses. Some families ground it coarsely in a hand mill, making cracked wheat that cooked faster. During World War I, when the government encouraged wheatless Wednesdays, families discovered that wheat berries were actually more filling than bread and continued eating them through the Depression. Apple butter on bread. In regions where apple trees grew, families made huge batches of apple butter each fall. Cooked down for hours with cider and spices, it kept without refrigeration. A thick layer on bread provided fruit and sweetness in winter months. Making apple butter was a community event. Families would gather with their windfall apples, the ones not perfect enough to store, and take turns stirring the huge copper kettles over outdoor fires. The resulting apple butter was divided among the families and lasted all winter. Spread thick on homemade bread, it turned a simple slice into something special. Children would get apple butter sandwiches in their lunch pails, and adults would have it for breakfast with their coffee. During the hardest times, apple butter on bread might be 2 of the day's 3 meals. Bread pudding. Stale bread transformed into breakfast by soaking it in milk and egg when available. Then baking or cooking on the stovetop, sometimes sweetened with sugar or raisins. It turned waste into a hot meal. Every household had a bread pudding recipe, usually handed down from grandmothers. Some used just bread, milk, and sugar. Others added whatever they had, dried fruit, nuts, or spices. During the Depression, creative cooks made water bread pudding using water instead of milk, sweetened with molasses. It could be made the night before and heated in the morning, saving precious morning time. In boarding houses, bread pudding was a standard breakfast because it used up all the leftover bread and could feed a dozen boarders cheaply. Barley porridge. Cheaper than oatmeal, barley made a filling hot cereal. Pearl barley cost about 6 cents a pound and expanded significantly when cooked. Families would cook it with water or milk, adding salt and sometimes a bit of butter. Barley porridge took longer to cook than oatmeal, often simmering for an hour or more, but it was incredibly filling. Some families added dried fruit or a spoonful of jam. Others mixed it with leftover vegetables for a savory porridge. In immigrant communities from Eastern Europe, barley porridge was traditional, often cooked with mushrooms and onions. During the Dust Bowl, when other crops failed, barley still grew in some regions, making barley porridge a survival food for many farm families. Cornbread and buttermilk. Crumbled cornbread in a glass of buttermilk was a Southern breakfast tradition. The cornbread was usually left over from supper, and buttermilk was a byproduct of churning butter. Together they made a complete breakfast. Some folks added a bit of salt and pepper, others preferred it sweetened with sorghum syrup. In summer, this was often eaten cold, but in winter, the buttermilk might be warmed slightly. Families who kept cows always had buttermilk, and cornmeal was one of the cheapest grains available. During the Depression, when even cornmeal was dear, mothers would make the cornbread with more water and less meal, stretching it as far as possible, but crumbled in buttermilk. Even this thinner cornbread became filling. Farina. Similar to cream of wheat but cheaper, farina was milled wheat cooked into a smooth porridge. A box cost about 8 cents and could make multiple breakfasts. It cooked quickly and was often recommended for children and invalids. Mothers would make it with milk when they had it, water when they didn't. Some added a pat of butter on top or a drizzle of honey. During the 1930s, Farina was often distributed by relief agencies because it was nutritious and easy to prepare. Children who grew up eating Farina every morning during the Depression often couldn't stand it as adults, but at the time, it kept them fed and warm. In Italian-American families, they called it semolina, and sometimes made it savory with cheese and pepper instead of sweet. Potato pancakes, leftover mashed potatoes mixed with a bit of flour and fried into pancakes, was another way to stretch yesterday's supper into today's breakfast. Sometimes an egg was added if available, but often just potatoes and flour. German and Polish immigrant families had been making these for generations. The potatoes would be mixed with flour, formed into patties, and fried until crispy in lard or butter. Some families grated raw potatoes instead, squeezing out the liquid and mixing with flour for a crispier version. Served with applesauce or sour cream when available, or just salt when times were tight. During the Depression, when a family might have potatoes and little else, potato pancakes could appear at every meal. Coffee soup. In Scandinavian and German-American communities, coffee soup was a traditional breakfast. Stale bread or hardtack broken into hot coffee, sometimes with milk and sugar added. It sounds unusual now, but it was a warming, caffeinated start to cold mornings. The bread would soak up the coffee, becoming soft and pudding-like. Some families added a beaten egg for richness. Others just used black coffee and stale rye bread. For families who couldn't afford much else, coffee soup at least provided warmth and enough caffeine to face another day of hard work. The practice came from the old country, where nothing was wasted and coffee was precious. During the Depression, when coffee was one of the few luxuries people tried to maintain, coffee soup let them stretch their coffee supply while getting a filling breakfast. Molasses cookies and milk. When there was time to bake, mothers made large batches of molasses cookies that kept well. These became breakfast when dunked in milk or coffee. Molasses was cheaper than sugar and added iron and other minerals to the diet. A batch of cookies made with flour, lard, molasses, and a bit of baking soda could last a week. Children would grab 2 or 3 cookies and a glass of milk before school. Working men would dunk them in their coffee before heading to the fields or factories. The cookies were hard when cool but softened perfectly when dunked. Some families called them dunkers or hermits when raisins were added. During the Depression, these cookies were often the only sweet thing children got, serving as breakfast, dessert, and sometimes lunch. These 25 breakfasts tell the story of American resilience and ingenuity during the hardest of times. Which of these forgotten breakfasts surprised you the most? Thanks for joining us on this trip down memory lane. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe.